Welcome to the deep dive. We sift through stacks of information, pull out the key nuggets, really give you that shortcut to being well informed. Today, we're diving into something, well, pretty fascinating. It's about human experience, really. That connection between those, sneaky self-defeatist thoughts, the sting of negative beliefs, maybe even shame, and how some cutting-edge evidence-based treatments can help navigate it all. You might be dealing with these thoughts yourself, or maybe you're just curious about how our minds tick. Our mission today is to shed some light on this connection, show you a path to maybe greater understanding and, healing. Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. A lot of us think, situations directly cause our emotions. Bad day equals bad mood. Simple, right? But the research, well, it shows often a bit more nuanced than that.
Yeah, exactly. What's really fascinating here is the cognitive model. It suggests that it's often our own thinking, maybe dysfunctional thinking, those automatic thoughts that just pop in that really shapes our mood and, well, our behavior too.
Automatic thoughts, like they just appear out of nowhere.
Pretty much. So, for example, maybe you're struggling with bills and the thought just hits you, I can't do anything right. Now, that specific thought, that can lead to feeling really down, profound sadness even. Might make you want to just retreat.
And maybe feel some shame around it, too.
Absolutely. Shame can definitely be part of that picture.
Mhm.
And it makes you wonder, right? Where do these persistent negative thoughts actually come from?
Right. That's where it gets really interesting, I think. Our sources suggest these automatic thoughts, they often bubble up from deeper stuff, underlying core beliefs we have. Beliefs about ourselves, maybe others, the world in general. Like, they're a tip of the iceberg.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, these core beliefs, they can be things like, I'm incompetent, or I'm worthless. Maybe nobody will like me.
Oof, those are heavy.
They are.
Yeah.
And they often come from earlier life experiences, maybe dealing with a really critical parent or other big life events. The research shows that when these beliefs get activated, you tend to interpret new situations through that negative lens.
Even if it doesn't really fit the facts.
Even if it's not logically valid, yeah. It's
Yeah.
like a filter that colors everything. It affects your thoughts, your feelings, how you act.
And often, this sounds like it shows up as that inner critic, right?
Yeah.
That voice that can be so harsh. What does this research tell us about that? Is it just mean?
Well, connecting it to the bigger picture, that inner critic often has this underlying intention, sometimes misguided, but the intention is usually safety.
Safety, how so?
It might criticize you for procrastinating, say, because deep down it fears you'll fail, maybe lose your job. Or it criticizes you for being out of shape because it's trying to ward off illness.
Okay. So
That-
trying to protect you in a weird way.
Exactly. But the method, the constant criticism, it can be really counterproductive. It just amplifies feelings of inadequacy, maybe guilt, and definitely implicitly shame.
So good intentions, bad outcomes sometimes.
Pretty much. It often makes things feel much worse.
And when we feel those really tough emotions or have those painful thoughts, especially if shame gets involved, our first instinct is often just to push them away, avoid them.
Precisely. And that's what we call experiential avoidance. Things like denial or just distracting yourself temporarily, they might give you a little relief short term.
Sure, feels better for a minute.
Right. But the studies consistently show that always trying to dodge that internal pain, it can actually make it come back stronger later. And over time, your life can get narrower, less flexible, because you start shrinking your world to avoid anything uncomfortable.
Wow, so it creates a kind of spiral.
Exactly. More avoidance leads to more pain. The key insight here, really, is what you resist tends to persist. Avoiding the pain actually makes your world smaller.
And then we get so tangled up in the thoughts themselves, we start believing them completely, like they're absolute truths,
We start thinking we are anxiety or we are shame.
instead of just experiencing it.
Right, and that's cognitive fusion. That's the point where you really buy into your thoughts, even when, your actual experience might suggest they're not helpful, maybe even harmful.
So taking them too literally is the danger.
That's what the research highlights, yes. Learning to just recognize this fusion, to see the thoughts as thoughts, that's a huge first step. It helps you reclaim your internal experience.
Seeing them for what they are, not necessarily what they say they are, that's powerful.
It is a powerful shift. The core idea is kind of like, your thoughts aren't facts, they're just thoughts.
Okay, so we've kind of dug into the roots here. How these challenging thoughts grow from core beliefs, how that inner critic tries to help, but maybe doesn't, and how avoiding it all can backfire, shrink our world. But the good news is, science does offer ways out, right? Clear pathways. So what do the evidence-based treatments suggest? How do we break free?
Well, a real cornerstone is cognitive behavior therapy. The core idea there is pretty straightforward. If you learn to evaluate your thinking in a more realistic, more adaptive way, you can lessen those negative emotions and change unhelpful behaviors.
How does that work? Like, how do you evaluate your thinking?
It involves identifying those automatic thoughts we talked about, the ones that just pop up,
Hmm.
and then really questioning them rigorously.
Like being a detective for your own mind, looking for clues.
That's a great analogy. Exactly. Through something called Socratic questioning, you'd start asking yourself things like, okay, what's the actual evidence this thought is true?
Hmm.
And what's the evidence against it? Is there maybe another way to look at this, a more balanced explanation?
So it's not about pretending everything's rosy.
Not at all. It's not about forcing positivity or ignoring evidence that supports the negative thought. It's about getting a more balanced, realistic view. And cognitive behavior therapy also really focuses on skill acquisition, learning practical tools.
Like what kind of tools?
Things like activity scheduling, just to help you get moving again, get re-engaged with life, and problem-solving techniques, to help you figure out solutions and actually put them into action.
And the research really backs this approach up, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Since way back in 1977, there have been over 2,000 outcome studies. They show it's effective for a really wide range of psychological, even psychiatric problems.
Wow, 2,000 studies.
Yeah, it's extensive. And some research even shows the improvement can last like 5, even 20 years after therapy ends.
That's impressive. What do you think makes it so enduring? Is it the skills focus?
I think that's a huge part of it, the emphasis on practical, learnable skills you can keep using. Plus, it's very data-driven. It really empowers people with tools for the long haul.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, I've also heard about recovery-oriented cognitive therapy. How does that fit in? Is it different?
Yeah, recovery-oriented cognitive therapy is a really interesting evolution, you could say. It's an adaptation of traditional cognitive behavior therapy, but it puts a really strong emphasis on your strengths. Strengths, not just problems.
Right. On your personal qualities, your aspirations, not just focusing on the symptoms. It's about helping you find, develop, and really live from your best self. They call it your adaptive mode.
Adaptive mode, like your inner resources.
Exactly. That part of you that feels capable, purposeful, connected, even when things are tough. It's about finding and really nourishing that positive core that's already inside you.
So you're building on what's already good and strong instead of just trying to fix what feels broken.
Precisely. It's about consciously accessing that mode, energizing it through activities you genuinely enjoy, things that give you purpose or connection. And doing that helps nurture a sense of hope, which is just vital for recovery, right?
Yeah.
The goal is shifting your energy away from the challenges and onto activities that truly matter to you, that align with your values.
And does the research support this focus on the positive? It does. Research indicates that boosting positive beliefs about yourself, about others, and experiencing more positive emotion, that's a strong predictor of success, of getting back into the community. It really shifts the focus from what's wrong to harnessing what's strong.
That sounds like a really hopeful approach. Then there's also acceptance and commitment therapy. That one seems to take a pretty unique angle, especially with those really sticky thoughts or feelings like shame.
Yes, acceptance and commitment therapy asks for a pretty fundamental shift in perspective. Instead of battling difficult thoughts and feelings, trying to eliminate them.
Which often doesn't work anyway.
Right. Instead, it focuses on willingness, learning to feel all your feelings more completely, even the uncomfortable ones. The idea is by doing that, you can live your life more fully.
Willingness. So not liking the pain, but making room for it.
Exactly. It's not about wanting the pain. It's about accepting its presence while you still move towards what you value, what's important to you. It's about learning how to feel better overall, not just trying to avoid feeling bad in the moment.
That sounds really counterintuitive, though. If you spent years pushing pain away, how do you just accept it?
It involves learning skills. One is called diffusion. That's about learning to get some distance from your thoughts.
Distance.
Yeah, learning to look at your thoughts rather than seeing the world through them. Like if you say the word milk over and over again really fast.
Yeah, it just becomes a sound.
Exactly, it loses its meaning. Diffusion is a bit like that for your thoughts. You learn to see them as just words, mental events, not necessarily commands or absolute facts. You also learn about your observing self.
The observing self.
Yeah, that part of you that's just aware. The conscious container for all your experiences. It doesn't change, even when thoughts or feelings come and go.
Okay, like the sky. Thoughts and feelings are clouds passing through.
That's a perfect metaphor. The sky remains, the clouds drift by. This helps you get with your internal struggles instead of constantly fighting against them, like dropping the rope in a tug of war.
Yeah, dropping the rope. I like that. And where do mindfulness and self-compassion fit into all this, especially with that inner critic or feelings of shame?
They're often woven in. Mindfulness, which you see a lot in things like mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, is about connecting with the present moment, but in a specific way, non-judgmentally, with acceptance.
So just noticing what's here without fighting it.
Right. It helps you step back from unhelpful thought loops like constant worrying or harsh self-criticism. And
Yeah.
self-compassion, often drawn from compassion-focused psychotherapy, tackles that inner critic and the sting of shame head on.
How does it do that?
It teaches you to cultivate kindness towards yourself, the same kindness you'd offer a good friend who's struggling.
That sounds simple, but probably hard to do.
It takes practice. It includes things like just labeling emotions, saying, this is sadness, or this is shame, which helps you disentangle from them. And practices like soften, soothe, allow, where you meet difficult feelings in your body with tenderness and care instead of resistance.
Soften, soothe, allow.
Yeah, and the research here is compelling too. Self-compassion can lead to greater emotional resilience, more self-appreciation, even self-forgiveness, which is huge for breaking free from that cycle of self-defeat. It's really about learning to be your own ally.
Wow. Okay. So it sounds like there are quite a few powerful tools, different angles on this. Are there common threads, things that run through most of these approaches for someone looking for help?
Definitely. A really key commonality across the board is skill acquisition.
Learning actual skills.
Yes, it's not just talking about problems. It's about learning and, importantly, practicing concrete skills you can use every day. This usually involves things like action plans or homework.
Homework, like in school.
Sort of,
Yep.
but it's practical steps you take between sessions, maybe activity scheduling, like we mentioned, or keeping thought records or doing mindfulness exercises. And they're always tailored with you, starting small, building up, really designed to help you succeed.
So it's not just about understanding things in your head. It's about actually doing things differently. How vital is that doing part, the action plans and homework, for seeing real change?
Oh, it's incredibly crucial. That's a fantastic point. Real change happens through that practice, not just from the inside alone. It makes the therapy highly active and very collaborative between you and the therapist.
Okay. And what about when things don't go perfectly? When progress stalls or you feel like you're going backwards? That happens, right?
Absolutely, it often does. And these therapies really acknowledge that progress is rarely a straight line. You'll likely hit plateaus, maybe even have setbacks. But just understanding that this is normal, part of the process, that helps you keep going. It's about building resilience for the whole journey,
Yeah.
not just aiming for some perfect destination.
That's really important to hear.
And the therapeutic relationship itself, that connection with the therapist, is paramount. It needs to be a safe space, somewhere you feel you can be open, give feedback, feel really understood and supported. That safety and collaboration, that's where the deepest work often happens.
That makes a lot of sense. So for our listeners who are hearing this and maybe feeling ready to explore these paths, ready to start their own journey, Edward Jenning Associates offers support, right? What can people expect if they reach out?
Yes. At Edward Jenny and Associates, we offer psychotherapy and also collaborative assessment. You can do them separately or together. Our whole approach is very much, as we say, grounded in science, focused on healing. So it aligns really closely with the evidence-based treatments we've been talking about today: cognitive behavior therapy, recovery-oriented cognitive therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, incorporating mindfulness and self-compassion. We really aim to help you get to the root of issues faster, gain insight into maybe behavioral triggers, understand relationship challenges more deeply, ultimately offer the insight you need to know yourself better.
And reclaim that life of purpose you mentioned.
Exactly, empowering you to achieve your purpose, even when life throws challenges your way.
Okay. And how can listeners connect with Edward Jenny and Associates if they're interested?
Sure, you can request an appointment online, or you can book a free consultation first just to see if it feels like a good fit. We offer therapy in person in West Grove, Pennsylvania, and also telehealth therapy across the entire state of Pennsylvania. And you can always just call us. The number is 610-444-6089.
Great. 610-444-6089.
Okay, as we wrap up this deep dive, maybe something to consider is this. If our thoughts and beliefs, especially those tangled up with self-defeat or shame, if they have the power to trap us in suffering, just imagine the power that lies in learning to gently challenge them. or accept them, or reframe them.
The research shows this isn't just about feeling a bit better. It's really about reclaiming your own strengths, defining a life that's driven by what you value most, discovering that resilience that's already inside you. It's about transforming that internal narrative, from one that feels limiting to one that feels purposeful, engaged, alive. So maybe the question to ponder is, what's one small step you could take today, maybe even right now, to just look at a difficult thought instead of looking through it?